A movie can change the world, create a new language, spur cultural movement and cement itself into history forever. But it can also bring down entire studios and destroy careers in the process. Heaven's Gate did all of that, and it changed Hollywood.
The lore of Heaven's Gate is, don't make a movie like that, because it'll finish you off.
When we read the synopsis for 1980 Heaven's Gate, and there is no connection to infamous cult, it sounds pretty good, right? An epic western set during Johnson County War tells the story of a rivalry between European immigrants and rich land cattle barons. It stars well-regarded actors like Christopher Walken, Jeff Bridges, John Hurt, Isabelle Huppert and singer-songwriter Chris Christopherson. It was directed by Michael Cimino, whose previous movie, 1978, The Deer Hunter with Robert De Niro, won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director.
My colleague and paisan Michael Cimino for The Deer Hunter.
With such a team, nothing could have gone wrong. Well, United Artists, the studio behind the production, certainly thought so. United Artists, a legendary studio started in 1919, produced and distributed many great films in the 70s and 80s. Rocky, Annie Hall, Apocalypse Now, just to name a few. And the new leadership under Stephen Buck and David Field wanted to prove themselves. And after seeing The Deer Hunter, they put their bets on Michael Cimino, giving him the ultimate control and the final cut on the Heaven's Gate project. However, according to the Film Inquiry, the problems started as early as casting commenced.
I mean, I knew who I wanted for the lead roles. And I've been very lucky in movies to get the people I've wanted. I mean, I wanted Clint Eastwood in my first movie, I wanted Jeff Bridges, and I got them.
So the studio agreed on Christopherson and Walken, but they wanted Jane Fonda or Diane Keaton for the female lead. Now Cimino disagreed and instead pushed for Isabelle Huppert, a French actress.
I try to believe my feeling for you and my debt to you for the protection in the beginning and now remains unchanged.
Nothing wrong with the French, even though I am a naturalized Brit, so I had to pledge my dislike of them. But the issue that United Artists, or UA, had with Huppert was her English and the fact that she had a strong accent and just didn't fit the role.
Excusez-moi. Bonjour.
I thought it made absolutely no sense to have a French actress playing the madam of a bordello in Wyoming in the 19th century.
Even Huppert said that only the director wanted her. Like, literally everyone else thought it was a bad idea.
Well, until Michael got me on his film, he had really to fight because, I mean, only he wanted me to do this film.
Cimino negotiated the creative freedom, so apparently he told the studio execs to literally fuck off.
Now, fuck off!
And cast her anyway for the role, which is not a great start to the production. Now, before we move on, let's quickly take inflation into consideration. So $1 million in 1980 would be almost 3.9 million in 2025. So for all the numbers that we say, make sure that you multiply by 4. It quickly became clear that Cimino was obsessive about the filming process and demanded perfect period accuracy in sets, costumes and props, as well as how they were shot on camera.
I thought he was handling it, pretty well, like orchestrating it. He's really particular about detail. That's one of the wonderful things about when you see the film.
So one example was that a street set had to be torn down and rebuilt because it didn't look right to the director over how wide it was. He ordered to take down a tree and then put it back together again for the graduation scene. And they built an underground irrigation system to keep the grass freshly green during the battlefield scene. And there were many takes of each scene.
Heaven's Gate, the spirit was, we'll do as many takes as we want. we'll show up in costumes and we'll just keep shooting and shooting and shooting, and there was no.
Film Inquiry reported that after 2 weeks, the production was 10 days behind and only 3 minutes of footage were deemed usable by Cimino, costing almost $1 million a minute. Now, by the way, the initial agreed budget for the whole thing was supposed to be $12 million. They were running over from the start. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you would have thought that creative freedom and lots of money meant that everyone was having fun on a set. Well, wrong again. Cimino's perfectionism meant that he put actors through intensive training, which they called Camp Cimino.
We had blank gun lessons. Then, after that, we went riding. We had riding lessons. And then after that, we went and had roller skating lessons.
It was lesson after lesson after lesson.
It took 1 month to rehearse that.
How many dancers?
Ooh, I don't remember, several hundred.
The punishing style of direction, together with the stress of making the film, started to make the cast irritated, to say the least.
Failure, the ship going down, Titanic, never let a director have his way.
But it was a time when the director was king, and Cimino decided to use the artistic freedom however he saw fit.
I don't believe in storyboarding. I don't like copying a two-dimensional drawing on a piece of paper. I want to be free in a 360-degree space.
And there was another story that after 1 day of shooting with 52 takes, they only got 1 second of film that Cimino thought was worthy. So the budget was going up and up and up. They are massively behind the schedule and the actors weren't having the best time. United Artists decided to do something about it and got rid of Cimino's friend, John Corelli, who was his producer but was unable to rein in the costs. They realized that the freedom they gave the director started to backfire.
United Artists was a special studio because they trusted filmmakers. They didn't sit and watch dailies. We didn't sit and look over their shoulder. It was a sense of mutual respect.
So they brought in Derek Kavanaugh to get the house in order and oversee the production properly. Well, Cimino didn't like that at all. He banned Kavanaugh from the sets and editing room, as well as saying that he wouldn't even speak to him.
I was the enemy, yes, I was the representative of those people on the other side of the fence, whom Michael should have considered to be supportive and not in any way an opponent.
And as if that wasn't enough, journalist Les Gapay published an exposé about Heaven's Gate production, in which he detailed all of what we've just said, plus accused the production of animal cruelty on sets. According to the LA Times, Gapay got a job as an extra on the production, and that's how he got the inside scoop. Heaven's Gate started to gather a lot of attention for all the wrong reasons, and that was before the movie went into post-production. The media reported that Michael Cimino shot around 225 hours on film, and his final cut was just under 5.5 hours long. It went 4 times over budget, costing $44 million, so over $171 million in today's money, and was a year behind schedule. So there was a lot of pressure to cut it down for the Christmas release. Oh, by the way, did you subscribe yet? No? It's fine, you still have time. So everyone has hotly anticipated the premiere of this controversial production, with United Artists spending $1.5 million on marketing in the lead-up. There is a story that when Cimino asked why nobody was drinking champagne at the November 1980 first screening, his publicist apparently replied, "Because they hate the movie, Michael." The final version was almost 4 hours long, and after it took a beating both critically and commercially, the studio pulled it from the theaters only after 1 week and postponed the global release. Cimino tried to cut it down again and again, but the ship had sailed. The whole project was tainted, and no one wanted to see it. It was a box office disaster, making less than 10% of the production budget back. To this day, there are several different cuts of Heaven's Gate you can watch. Unfortunately for Cimino and United Artists, that wasn't the end of their problems. First was the animal cruelty that we mentioned earlier, reported by Les Gapay in his exposé. Horses were injured and apparently died. There was actual rooster-chicken fighting going on and other serious allegations. This added fuel to the fire, with the American Humane Association calling for a national boycott of the film. There was a case filed by a horse owner over the mistreatment of an animal, which was settled outside the court. But, that led to a general public backlash. In later edits, scenes which depicted animal cruelty were cut from Heaven's Gate. But the outrage led to industry reform, and all future productions would have animal welfare teams on sets, thus creating the "no animals were harmed" disclaimers. Transamerica, the owner of United Artists, wrote off the entire movie as a loss and decided to dump the studio and get out of the movie business.
It's not about money, it's about sending a message. Everything burns.
They sold UA to MGM, which ended their independence. They had other flops during that time, but Heaven's Gate was the final nail in the United Artists' coffin. But what about the crew? Well, they were dragged through the controversy and media circus, and everyone in the industry blamed Heaven's Gate for making it harder for others to make movies. The actors eventually got back on track and had long and illustrious careers, but Christopherson said that it made him unmarketable for a little while. But the biggest loser was the director, Michael Cimino, who only a couple of years earlier won an Oscar for The Deer Hunter. He became a pariah in Hollywood, jumping from project to project, with many left unfinished due to his perfectionism and hardline attitude. He did 4 more movies after Heaven's Gate, all of them somewhat box office and critical flops. He became a recluse, which spared many theories about his personal and professional life. His agent said that he became the Howard Hughes of Hollywood, locked at home, furiously writing scripts, books and even songs, until he passed in 2016. It's true that art often gets a second life, sometimes long after the artist's death. And to some people, the critics were too harsh on the Heaven's Gate project. After the movie was put on TVs years later, it had kind of a revival. It was released on VHS, DVD and even Laserdisc, and it was restored by Criterion Collection, which Cimino approved. He presented the version at the 2012 Venice Film Festival, and this time was applauded by the audience. I assume that they finally drank that champagne too. The critics reassessed the production, now praising the scope and cinematography by legendary Vilmos Zsigmond, saying that it has its faults, but it's a window into another era of Hollywood when studios let directors pursue their grand vision. Time Out London put Heaven's Gate as the 12th greatest Western of all time, and BBC ranked it at 98 out of 100 great American films. As audiences' tastes changed, the political themes and even the length of the film are now appreciated. We are used to 10-part limited series or 3.5 hours of Scorsese and Ridley Scott directors' cuts, so Heaven's Gate runtime doesn't bother anyone anymore. Nicholas Barber wrote for the BBC in 2015 that so much of Heaven's Gate is patently splendid that it's mind-boggling that anyone could pronounce it an unqualified disaster. Ultimately, Cimino's film was misunderstood at the time of its release, and fan-made trailers show the splendor and epicness of the picture.
These immigrants only pretend to be farmers.
There was another unintended legacy of Heaven's Gate. In the 70s and 80s, Hollywood was seen as a place where directors like Coppola, Scorsese, and of course Cimino had the freedom to pursue their vision. Blank checks, unchecked control, and obsessive perfectionism became a nightmare that played out in public and changed the studio's attitudes pretty much overnight. It was the end of an era of artistic Hollywood, and studios became controlling over finances and opted for more marketable movies with mainstream appeal. It was over for risk-taking and the beginning of a calculated production aimed at creating the next action-packed blockbuster. Because Hollywood will applaud, award and praise when art makes them money. But when ambition leads to loss and failure, such as with Heaven's Gate, they never forgive it. If you want to see more stories like this, you can like, you can subscribe, you can comment, you can do whatever you want. I'm not your mom, but thanks for watching. See ya.